Well, the Kansas City Chiefs won't be a mere footnote in the story of Travis Kelce's life as he's set to retire a Kansas City Chief. We got all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL, here to bring you your daily dose of all the biggest stories around the National Football League. It's Tuesday, so you've got Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media. And on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at our Yike and Like, as we do every Tuesday, what we did like and what we didn't like from a very busy week across the NFL. We're going to be leading that off, of course, looking at whether or not Sean Payton was really baiting the Minnesota Vikings in his quote-unquote trade-up phone calls. I know Luke's going to have some takes on that.
Oh, Sean Payton.
We're also going to take a look at if I had a penny for every time I've said that sentence. Speaking of my guy, we're also going to be taking a look at our my guy draft classes, the draft classes from this year that had the most my guys that we're most excited about. And we're going to lead everything off, of course, with a 2-year extension for Travis Kelce, which sets him up to retire a Kansas City Chief. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. Look, Luke and I will admit it, we've got competitive sides. It's just that we're big fans of guys like of games like Monopoly Go, because it caters to those competitive sides for sure. It's the hit mobile twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. So Luke, Kansas City and Travis Kelce, 2-year extension, nearly $35 million in new money. This seems to set everything up for Kansas City and the to basically see a lifer out of Travis Kelce. And I think that's exactly what he and this organization deserve together. What do you think about the extension that he gets, which we can have some conversations of whether or not it's actually an extension, though?
Well, yeah, it's so this extends him through his age 38 season.
Right.
For a tight end, that is bananas. I mean, that's when kickers start to feel old.
Yeah, right.
38 for a tight end is completely insane. So assuming he doesn't play all the way to 38, but hey, look, like he's the best in the league, right? Maybe maybe the best ever, you could argue. But you could argue.
You could argue that might be about it.
You could argue forever about that. But like those kinds of athletes, yeah, maybe he's just got, longevity can be part of it too, right? But to me, it feels a little more like a pay raise. They add 30 some million to his next 2 years.
34.
But he was slated to make $12 million in base salary this year. That's getting like lapped by several other tight ends in the market. And when you're Travis Kelce, that's kind of unacceptable. So it feels a little bit like a let's keep the star player happy kind of extension.
Yeah.
And yeah, he is the star player. He's the best receiver on the Chiefs, and he has been for a while. Part of those Super Bowls, right? Like that is very important to do. And then, you work it into an extension. But my guess, we are recording this, we haven't seen the full structure yet, but my guess is that you're going to see some provisions in and around the last couple of years that are going to be maybe a lot of money tied up in like a roster bonus, or money that's not quite fully guaranteed, or money that like is guaranteed but on a rolling basis, so that if he does decide to hang him up, you didn't guarantee him a bunch of money and then you're out all that cap space. But it's only contingent on him continuing to play. So if he plays, he gets that money, but now he can kind of make that retirement decision with that information and knowing exactly what he's getting into every year as he puts his body through more and more and more, and knows exactly what he's supposed to get paid if he decides he wants to play two more years. And then the Chiefs are protected. If he does decide to hang him up, they didn't just guarantee him a bunch of money and then suddenly take a huge dead cap hit.
Yeah, I think in any case, whether you give him this 2-year extension or not, very likely he was going to be a lifer in a Kansas City Chiefs uniform anyway, because he would have played through that 2025 season when his deal was originally expected to end, and then maybe sign a 1-year deal to come back. We see that all the time if he wanted to keep playing and everything. But this effectively just guarantees that whether or not he wants to call it quits after this contract or he wants to play into his extension years, as you mentioned, the framework is there. The thing that's crazy for me, though, is that you look at this and it's $34 million. It's $17 million per year in new money for those 2 years for a 37 and 38-year-old tight end. Like, what is he going to be contributing at that point? And I guess we'll find out. I guess that's part of it too. He might be contributing 1,000-yard seasons still. Who knows?
Like, I don't feel like betting against him, to be honest. I'm not
betting against him. Don't tell him that I did, because I didn't. But man, it's just one of those things where it's just like, wow, like, man, going into 37, 38 and making, $17 million in new money at that point, like, that's pretty impressive for a guy that plays any position other than quarterback, right? Like, any position other than quarterback getting that kind of payday. And that just kind of shows you what kind of a transcendent and just kind of unprecedented playmaker, athlete, player, talent that Travis Kelce is.
There is something else to understand here. All of those numbers sound super, super spooky. For one, I mean, it's more wide receiver money than tight end money, which is a way to think about it.
Which makes sense too.
Which makes a lot of sense. He is the premier wide receiver on the Chiefs. He's the go-to guy. So, like, who cares about the letters next to his name? But also, he signed his initial contract extension. The last time he signed a contract, he put pen to paper, was 2020. We were in COVID. We had no idea what the cap was going to do.
Right.
That was a very bad time for players to sign extensions. If you signed your extension in 2020, you almost certainly got underpaid. And now that the cap exploded, both from the recovery after COVID, but also TV money, maybe even betting, wagering money is coming into, and the cap increasing so exponentially, it means that what Travis Kelce was making, it is super easy to argue that it's less than half of what he was worth. So
good
17 mil in new money. Yes. Yeah. That's how it
100%.
works now. Yep. That's he's the highest paid tight end. That's because he's the most recent one to sign. And guess who the next highest paid tight end is going to be? The next one that signs. Welcome to the cap explosion. This is how it works.
Yeah, great point. It's going to be really interesting to look back on this in 2026, 2027 to see what the other tight end contracts actually look like. What's the actual market for tight ends 4 years from now, 5 years from now, and where this deal actually slots in with that. Because I'll bet, Luke, by your observation there, we're going to see more and more top tight ends signing contracts after this. And Travis Kelce is going to finish his career potentially at least a little underpaid by the time that he's done, based upon the idea of being the best one. But we're talking about him in 2-3 years from now.
Who else is signing? That's my question.
Yeah,
this is part of it too. Is we went like 3
years,
2-3 years without a major tight end signing. So when TJ Hawkinson signed his deal last offseason, it was the first major tight end, like market rate tight end extension in like 2 or 3 years, and it still has just been nobody else. So I don't know who else is signing. The tight end classes coming out of the draft have been catastrophically bad.
Yeah, not great.
From Kyle Pitts not really working out to what he was supposed to be, to years like where Adam Troutman was the first guy off the board. He was like in the fourth round.
They traded their entire day 3 for that 4th round pick. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for Josh Metellus.
And then traded him so they could move up like 20 picks in the 6th round years later. So that tells you where that all went. To draft a wide receiver.
To Sean Payton.
That's right.
No, that's the kind of draft classes that have come out. So the guys that should be getting extended right now, like if you were a 2020 draft class member, you're getting extended right now. That 2020 draft was a very particularly bad draft class. There weren't any first rounders. I don't think there was anybody before the 3rd round that year, if I recall.
Yeah.
Just really, really bad, like just nobody in the top end of that draft class. And I think the next couple of years outside of like Kyle Pitts are kind of the same thing. There's like Pat Freiermuth, who gets extended that changes this market. So Kelce might own it for a while, being, this like old guy hooping, making bajillions of dollars. But it's really hard to argue that he doesn't deserve it, because if he doesn't, then who does?
Yeah, it's not going to be until, I assume Pitts will push something, just not even based on production, but based on timing. I assume Michael Mayer will probably push something if he comes
maybe
along.
He becomes a free agent.
Yeah, and then we're waiting on Brock Bowers.
Yeah,
which is another 5
does Kyle
years
Pitts
from
get?
now.
Does Kyle Pitts get a second contract?
Kind
of up to this year, isn't it?
Yeah. This would be the year to decide that for sure. So we'll see. Thank goodness they drafted another quarterback to throw on the football. Speaking of bad draft classes, we're not going to talk necessarily about bad draft classes coming up, but we are going to get to the draft classes that have the most of our guys in it. So the draft classes that we're most excited about. So we're going to get to that as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by Monopoly Go, the mobile twist on the hit board game that you all remember from your childhood, Monopoly. And you remember how good it felt to physically and mentally and emotionally annihilate your little brother. Now you can relive that feeling with Monopoly Go, and you can do it in style with all kinds of unique stickers, cool new playing pieces that you can unlock, and emojis for rubbing it in when you have utterly annihilated your loved ones. There's always something new that you can go check out at Monopoly Go. So go discover very cool ways to play the old classic board game. Go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
All right, everybody, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. We appreciate you very much making us your first listen of the day every day here on the show. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream, the first of its kind when it comes to national sports, that you're going to be able to find over on YouTube. And we've talked about it several years in a row. What is it that we don't like about draft grades? Before we get into the two draft classes that have the most of our guys in there, which I'm most excited to talk about.
So the worst things that happen in sports media are the things where there is a big disconnect between what the message being sent and the message being received, such as lies of reports. But draft grades are a big one because the message being sent is really who took my guys. It's what we're doing here right now. It's who took my guys. If you're a draft analyst and you're somebody with your own big board or this whole big thing, your draft grades are basically just going to be a reflection of correlation between that team's draft and your board. Did they take the right players at the right places according to your opinions? And that's fine, right? That's just people kind of doing a conclusion wrap-up thing on all the months of work that they did. Totally fine. Who did I like, right? And you use a little grading system, that's fine. What is received is like a message that comes across way more objective. This is who had a good draft. This is who had a bad draft. When really this is who had a draft I did or didn't agree with. Very important distinction that we very much lose in the sauce here. And then the other thing that I hate about draft grades is that the scale is completely broken. I will not take you seriously if you gave out 2 C's and those were the worst grades.
Completely agree with that.
Like, come on now. Go, have a take. If you didn't like that team's draft, tell them you didn't like that team's draft. Oh, it was average.
Yeah.
Come on.
You know what else I hate? Minuses and pluses. I hate minuses and pluses in grading.
True. Like just do a 1 out of 10 if you're going to do that, right?
Yeah,
like
100%.
At that point, if you got like A+, A minus, B+, like you've already got 8 grades. Just do a 1 out of 10 and color it the same way. You'll get the same reaction.
Yeah, 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to take away the veil of grades and just give you really what it is. The 2 draft classes, 1 draft class for Luke, 1 draft class for me, that have the most of our guys in them. We spent a lot of time looking at a bunch of different draft prospects based upon what our individual teams that we cover needed. And based on that, we got a pretty good expansive look at what this draft class looks like. And of course, our guys over at Locked On NFL Draft help us out. Guys over at Locked On NFL Scouting help us out with all the stuff that they do. So we're going to take a look at the draft classes that have the most my guys. So Luke, let's start with you. Which draft class had the most of your guys in it?
It's the Dolphins. It was always going to be whoever took Chop.
There you go. Look, biracial King Mike McDonald strikes again. I love it. Chop
Robinson might be the most my guy has ever been for me. And look, I've been doing Locked On. This is the 7th draft I've done here, but I know, right? Or 6th. I don't know what counting is.
Just say 7.
Say 7. So I've done a lot of these, but it's most of my like draft stuff has been aggregating draft guides and trying to look at, people who do a lot more work than I do and trying to kind of just, pass their opinions along and say, hey, this isn't my thing. I'll be humble about it, but here's what this guy thinks. But the last couple of years I've decided to sort of take the leap and say, no, I'm going to actually try to come up with my own on this. I'm going to try to learn what I'm looking at, which makes me a lot more passionate about these takes. So it's only been a couple of years where I can really have my guy, but my goodness, Chop Robinson gets me stoked. Putting him next to Jalen Phillips is so awesome. I love that for them. I like Mohamed Kamara. They took in the 4th round, the Colorado State edge rusher as well to sort of rotate in there. I know a lot of people like Taj Washington from USC. Patrick Paul. You're a big Patrick Paul fan.
Oh yeah, I like just
Houston tackle.
ruthless offensive lineman, and he is just
Yeah.
a mean dude, and I love that. Real quick,
And-
you said Robinson's like one of the biggest my guy of any my guy. Just give me a couple things that you love about him.
Relentlessness is the thing that I did. Okay, so when you're a defensive lineman, what's your goal? Just generally, like super broad strokes.
Get to the quarterback or get to the ball.
Even more generally, cause problems. You want to be a person that
like
causes problems, right?
Mhm.
You want to get into the backfield and cut off the field. If running back can't come past me because I've cut off the field. And if I'm in the A gap, say, and I've cut off the field, I've cut off the B gap and the C gap. I just did 3 people's jobs at once.
Ooh,
and they don't have to, they could get their butts kicked and it doesn't matter, right? So penetration, this is Aaron Donald in run defense, right?
Yeah.
This is like how he does it. So he's a penetrator. He is incredibly evasive, but very importantly, because he's a smaller body, he sets the edge. When there's a big tackle coming at him or a pulling guard, which is harder for small guys to kind of take on all that momentum, he can get his shoulder down, hammer against it, and set that edge. If you watch zone runs that go hit to his side, you think, you want the offensive tackle to kick that end out, right? You want that offensive tackle to kind of lead the charge, and it's just this wave of offensive linemen. You will see that tackle just collapse and all the linemen run past him, and you've totally ruined the angles.
Right.
There's a million reps all over his tape of him just doing the most insane, incredible thing ever. I think, honestly, his weight made people overthink him. I genuinely think he's the best defensive player in the draft. He's my pick for defensive rookie of the year. Go Dolphins.
Very nice. Very nice. Absolutely love that. I wanted to see if I can see Chop Robinson's odds right now. Plus 1,600. That's pretty. I mean, you'll take those odds. You'll take those odds for defensive rookie of the year with our friends over at FanDuel.
If I didn't live in the state of California, I sure would.
Darn it.
But I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, I'll get to. Let me jump in with my guy draft. My guy draft is the New York Giants. Even post Malik Neighbors, who of course is an LSU wide receiver, so of course he's going to be a my guy. But beyond that, Tyler Nubin, the safety out of Minnesota, a guy that I really, really liked. Great range, good coverage ability. He can play down in the box, secure tackler as well. Theo Johnson, the big tight end out of Penn State. He was the first one at the combine that actually moved the dang sled, the blocking sled, when he was out there. It was so embarrassing.
Oh, I remember that.
Everybody before him couldn't do it. And then like Tip Ryman and Tanner McLaughlin just blew it up. But he was the first one to really move it. But I think he's got a lot of untapped passing game potential because he played at Penn State, and Penn State doesn't throw the football.
So what? Okay, I didn't see the clip. What were they doing on it? Were they just trying to shock the pad, or were they trying to actually drive?
No, they were trying to drive.
They were trying to drive, and just nobody was getting purchased.
Everybody kept going straight up with it. Everybody kept pushing up. They weren't getting the drive. They weren't able to stay low. And all of a sudden, Theo Johnson comes in, and he gets a little bit of lift on it. Maybe gets it a little bit higher than he needed to, and lost a little bit of leverage. But he had the lower body, just sort of like trunk strength, if you will, to just push the dang thing, and then finally got it. And then a couple of other guys came in, really cleaned it up and showed you how to do it. But he was the first one that really finally got it.
Got you. Because there are definitely things you want to do. Like, were they on their knees? Or were they getting up?
No,
or were they stand driving?
Trying to move it. Yeah.
Okay, they were trying to, if they were trying to chop their feet, that's one thing. But yeah, sometimes you'll get guys that like get up above their head, which is actually pretty good leverage if you're in, like if you're in the trenches, and your hands are up here on someone. That means they're probably like chin back, like head totally thrown back, and you're probably getting leverage on them. I've talked about this a ton with Dallas Turner, covering him on Locked On Vikings, this like leverage thing. But yeah, you're probably looking for like spine angle, like angle of power. It's getting a little bit steep for him. And if it's like nice and horizontal, you'll be able to get a better thing. But for people who get like their hands up above their head like that on the sled, to me, that's not an issue. It just kind of is an aesthetic.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the other guy that I really liked out of that draft class was Tyrone Tracy, the running back out of Purdue. Before he was a running back with the Purdue Boilermakers, he was a wide receiver with Iowa. He's kind of like a modern day Ty Montgomery. Sorry to bring up a Packer, but modern day
Raven. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
was he a Saint too?
He was a Saint for a little while. Yeah. He contributed here quite a bit, especially when the Saints didn't have any wide receivers. Yeah, Jets legend Ty Montgomery, and now it'll be New York Giants legend, Tyrone Tracy. I really like him. I mean, the thing that I like the most about him is that, especially across this sort of expansive, this expanse of wide zone offenses that want some positionlessness and Shanahan-ness and all these other things. He's a guy that is a legitimately good running back that can also run routes, catch the football, and high point passes as a wide receiver. So when you put him in the backfield, you have to believe that he could run the football and that they could turn around and hand it off to him. And that just creates an easier way to disguise things that they might do with him. Now, will they be creative with him is the next question mark when it comes to the New York Giants, whose offense isn't particularly known for being creative at this time, but hey, he's on a rookie contract. There's time.
Hey, maybe Dable's got some tricks he just couldn't pull off because
just didn't have
they
the guy.
Didn't have anyone.
They didn't have my guy. That's what it was. Now they've got my guy.
We've seen the Tyrod Taylor offense. Maybe that's
right. Yeah. so that's definitely the my guy draft for me is the New York Giants. We'll get to more draft classes and more evaluation of draft picks all throughout the summer here. Next, we're going to get to our yike and our like. Going back to the NFL draft, Sean Payton says that he was faking trying to trade up for J.J. McCarthy to push the Minnesota Vikings to do so. I think we disagree. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. They now have all their rookie props up, so you can get, Rookie of the Year awards and stuff like that. You can get over-unders. What do you like on there, on the rookie props, Ross?
One of the ones that I really like is Roma Dunze, now the wide receiver over at Chicago. He's got an over-under of receiving yards of 675.5 yards. I feel pretty okay with that. I know there's a lot of other weapons over there right now. And hey, J.J. McCarthy, 3,075.5 is the over-under there with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, honestly, I'd take the under.
I like the under.
But if you want to bet on any of those or anything else over there at FanDuel, of course, NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs all going on as well. So you can bet on those things too. Games in a series, goals, 3-pointers, whatever. You can find it at FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you sign up there, your first bet will get you back $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Win or lose. Doesn't matter if that bet is good or not. So whatever it is, just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Lay down $5 on something. Get your $150 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, everybody, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL. Appreciate you as always checking us out and making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to go and check out your favorite local team show as well here on Locked On NFL. We got NBA, MLB, NHL, and of course, dozens of college teams covered as well. So just search for your favorite Locked On Teams podcast and check it out for your second listen today. Luke, Sean Payton has noted himself as being a liar. Years ago, he said that he wasn't interested in Antonio Brown, and then they brought Antonio Brown in for an interview. A reporter asked him about it, and he said, well, I was probably just lying to you. Like, he said it himself. So now he's saying that he was lying about
everybody does it.
Up.
At least he's honest.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's always been very upfront about it. Now he's talking about lying on draft day, and I think we've got some doubts.
After in his post-draft press conference on day one, somebody asked him, the Broncos end up with Bo Nix, QB6 off the board at number 12. So somebody asked him, hey, he kind of stood pat. Did you ever think about trading up?
I was actively involved in trying to pretend we were moving forward.
So ultimately the Vikings trade up with the Jets to prevent such a thing from happening. And he's walking away like he pulled one over on the Vikings, which is very funny for a couple of reasons. One, we know you're lying, dog. Come on now. Like, of course you are lying. You get out of here. And for two, you just supplied a team in your conference with draft picks from a team outside of your conference. So if anything, this is not good for the Broncos. It's just pure spite, which is why it's my like of the week. I love how Sean Payton is always the villain. I love that he does things out of spite, even if it isn't technically like optimal process. He is just a messy little diva, and I absolutely love it. The world needs a villain, and Sean Payton is mine.
I love that he's so willing to step into that role. It's like watching a good episode of
Thrives.
Always. Yeah, man. It's like watching a good episode of. Oh, good.
He was so boring on Fox. I wish he was a little spicier on Fox, but he got when he did the commentating. He was just kind of another guy.
Yeah, 100%. So it's been cool to see him kind of back in his element. I think that's a big part of it too. He's kind of doing what he loves again as a coach. And so now he gets to kind of just play up this villain role and everything. And I absolutely love it. So I'm right there with you on that. Let me jump to my yike. I'm going to jump to my yike. Every now and then we see teams rehash things with former players that maybe they feel that they shouldn't have let walk or anything like that. But usually it takes a little bit of time. We've seen players return to franchises after a while. Well, my yike today is taking a look at the Dallas Cowboys reuniting already 1 year later with Ezekiel Elliott. That took no time at all for Jerry Jones and the Dallas Jerry Joneses to say, wow, you know what? We really screwed the pooch on that one. We got to go and get us Ezekiel Elliott back. They finally turned the keys over to Tony Pollard and did it wrong. And now he's a Tennessee Titan. And so now they've had to go back to Ezekiel Elliott. The person that I am happy for in this situation, though, is Ezekiel Elliott, because that must feel nice.
Yeah.
That must feel
Where
real,
did your failure
nice.
bring you?
Yeah, you know, and everything. And so for me, that's one of those things where it's like, yes, you came crawling back to the guy. Everything like that. So
was it that they got sniped for the Texas running back?
I think that had to be a part of it.
Got it. I mean, because it was like on draft day, it was going down. So they were clearly like trying to get somebody. And then if we don't get that guy, we go to Zeke Elliott. So it's like 100%. You're also Ezekiel Elliott walking in knowing that like they preferred like a 3rd round running back to you.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'm walking in. If I'm Zeke, I'm walking in. Chest up, ready. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm back. Y'all couldn't do this without me. Happy to be here. Like 100%. I'm in that for Zeke.
My yike of the week is an easy one. It's the Falcons, but it's not just the fact that they took Penix. Look, if they just really, really love Penix and they think that he's the future guy, they have Kirk Cousins as a 2-year bridge because that's the plan that they like. If that's the plan that they have, it's a weird plan, but whatever you do, but it doesn't really feel like that's just that was the vision. Yeah. Their pre-draft process with Michael Penix was very strange, very weirdly, less research from the Falcons than you saw from teams like the Giants or who were just lying, but the Patriots, the Vikings, the Commanders. Like the Giants in a full bluff did more QB research than the Falcons did, who actually picked one at number 8. And there was an Albert Breer article that came out about the processes for the Vikings, the Falcons, the Broncos, and all these like robust processes. And then it's like the scene of the Falcons brass at Washington's pro day, watching Mike Penix run a 4.5 40 going, oh my God, we're going to have to take him at 8. Just completely misreading the room. Unbelievably misreading the room. They also just not talking to Kirk Cousins about that in part.
Yeah, that's wild.
So the Vikings told Kirk Cousins as part of that negotiation, this was also in the Breer article, as part of their attempt at a contract negotiation this offseason, said, hey, FYI, we are taking a quarterback. So if that changes the deal, we want to be we want to make sure that you know that, we want to be upfront about that. And that did end up being like a really big problem in, getting Cousins to say no to certain deals. Hey, I'm not going to sign like a big long deal if you're just going to draft a quarterback and try to replace me. I'm not as interested in that as I am in free agency. That's big reason for that. And also we have some evidence of Kirk Cousins struggling to keep secrets.
That's my big thing. That's my big
one.
Yeah.
I like kind of get not telling him, but also you knew that about him. Yeah. You knew that he didn't want to be on a team where his successor was breathing down his shoulder, and you just did that. The whole process is so backwards for the Falcons. They get a yike.
I didn't say it. It wasn't me. I just want to be very clear. It was Luke. I agree with him wholeheartedly, but this wasn't just me talking trash about the Falcons for no reason. All right.
No,
everybody.
And I'm not even like,
this is bad.
The guy who gets worked over the worst here is Kirk Cousins. Who I've been plenty critical of.
Yeah.
But this sucks for him. Are you kidding me? Like he thought he had like his new destination. He was going to play this is White's hometown. Like he's next to family. This was like a dream scenario for him. And then they turn around in 2 months. You have a tampering problem and they're going to replace you. Like it's immediate drama. This sucks.
Oh yeah, that does suck. Yikes. Indeed a yike. I'll wrap up with my like here. I'll keep it quick. I just love draft phone call videos, man. I love when these start to hit the social media verse and everything like that. I won't go too into detail here because we're gonna wrap up. But if you haven't seen it, go and find Josiah Aziram's draft phone call, EZIRIM, and just enjoy joy for 30 something seconds or whatever that video, however long that video is. It's totally worth your time. Draft videos are the best. The draft is the best. I love seeing dreams come true. And look, thank you for helping us have our dreams come true here on the Locked On NFL podcast. We really appreciate you very much for being here and for making us a part of your day every single day. Tomorrow, James and Chris will be with you answering some of the biggest questions around the league and taking a look more, of course, at this wonderful NFL draft, which we'll be talking about for weeks to come, I'm sure. For Luke Braun, who's watching the Aziram video, I know he is because I can see the smile.
I've got it pulled up. I got it pulled up. I'm ready.
You got to go and check it out. Go and watch it. But for my good friend here, Luke Braun, I'm Ross Jackson. We'll see you here on the Locked On NFL podcast next week. And of course, Chris and James will be back with you here tomorrow here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.